till tomorrow.
Wrong holiday.
As long as they're not out and out lying and
No.
making up stuff that isn't true.
Take it back.
Those two
Yeah,
do
you're
not do that. And when they make a mistake, they come back
Behind
and
the door,
tell
these
you.
fans.
As long as you don't tell me to
And
have
that's
it.
not how it is on Fox.
So they turn this thing on.
Not that the fans.
That's the difference.
I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it. I got done.
In other words, like 5 years ago, they were not as bad as they are now. You don't think so? You think
Well,
they're
I
bad
think-
now?
Enterprise.
I think during,
You don't have to
you have
turn
Neil
this one on.
Cavuto, who
Alright,
isn't terrible.
please, don't turn this one on.
Don't turn that one
You've got a
Thank you.
couple others now,
Okay, do
that
I
are
Old enough.
batteries?
terrible. Some of the more moderate ones.
Shabbat
have left.
shalom, good
Yeah,
Shabbat.
some are on MSNBC now,
Standing
and
here
some
with
are on
monster
CNN,
people.
and some are in regular ABC, NBC, CBS.
CBS.
So,
Oh, it's on.
I would say Hannity's gone off the
Okay.
deep
Hi,
end,
Al.
although he
He's
was always,
off the
Ow.
yeah.
How you doing?
Wonderful, how
What
are
are you
you?
trying to tell
Alright.
us?
Shabbat shalom, good Shabbos.
Shabbat shalom.
I looked at the Torah portion, it's Bamidbar. On the plus side, it's the first, it's a new book. Okay, Bamidbar means in the wilderness, and I think we still are. And the English translation is not in the wilderness, it's numbers, because the thing starts with the census. And the Torah portion is all numbers, and because the first, this is the deal. I think I talked about this before, but whatever. Okay, Moses is on Mount Sinai, and God says, ooh, I got an idea, take this down, take this down. And Moses said, ready, although there's a limit to how much I can get onto 2 stone tablets. Maybe you want me to get some parchment. And God said, sure, I'll wait. Okay. Anyway, God says, I want the firstborn to serve me in the Mishkan, in the sanctuary. Who are my firstborn? Absolutely no one.
Kohen.
Okay.
Kohen.
What?
I am.
Kohen? No, firstborn.
And
Well, you're the only
Kohen.
born. You're a firstborn.
I'm firstborn and a Kohen.
Okay, a
But I'm a
Bechor.
girl, so I
Bechor
don't
is a
count.
firstborn.
I
Okay?
don't count.
I'm sorry?
I don't count.
Sure you do.
I'm a female.
Oh my God, you never told me. Okay.
I'm surprised you haven't noticed.
Are you
Anyway,
sure?
Okay. God says, I want the firstborn to serve me in the Mishkan. And Moses says, sure, got it, no problem. Then Moses descends from the mountain, and he finds that not only have the Israelites built a golden calf, but the firstborn are among those who are cavorting around it, and they are doing what the Torah euphemistically refers to as playing. But we know they're doing much more than playing, don't we?
Having fun.
Is that Sodom and Gomorrah?
No, it didn't travel with them.
Oh, okay.
It's okay. And then God is very upset, and he has them grind the Egel HaZahav, the golden calf, to powder. He mixes it with river water and makes the Israelites drink of it, sort of the biblical equivalent of eating crow. And then God says, okay, let me destroy this people and make of you, Moses, a great nation. And Moses says, not a good idea, God. This is the first time, it's not history, it's prehistory, first time in prehistory that this excuse has been used in Judaism. What will the Gentiles think? Okay? You know, when they say it's a shanda for the goyim,
Oh, I see.
used to be, if my father saw a list of a list of people who had, say, cheated on Wall Street or done something wrong in government, which hardly ever happens, he would say, it's a shanda for the goyim, meaning it's a shame. I don't like that term goyim anyway, but we'll leave that alone. He said it's a shame that the Gentiles should see the Jews behaving this way. So God says, okay, I was only kidding. I'm not going to destroy them and make of you a great nation because you're a guy. To make a great nation, you need somebody else. Okay, and you're estranged from your wife, Tzipporah. He says, come on up, back on Mount Sinai, we'll figure this out. And he says, I changed my mind, says God. He says, I don't want the firstborn to serve me in the sanctuary anymore. I want the Levites, because when Moses called for backup, namely a killing squad of people with swords to murder all of the evildoers. Don't you love this stuff? We teach this to kids.
That's really good.
The
Gory.
Levites stepped forward, not surprisingly, because Moses is a Levite, Aaron is a Levite, Miriam is a Levite, and so on and so forth. Any Levites here?
What's the difference?
You can't be a Kohen and a Levi. You gotta make up your mind.
This is America.
Okay. But did you take, very good, Touche, did you take the exam? Yes.
No, they used me as a levy one day, cause
They
they
used you as a what?
had a levy one day.
A lemming?
A lemon too?
Levite, a
A
Levite.
lemon. A
Levite.
lemon.
A levy.
You're as sweet as can be to me, sweetie. Okay, so this is the deal where when you take the vacation in Maine and you go to the gift shop and the plaque says, Rule 1, the boss is always right. Rule 2, if the boss is ever wrong, see Rule 1. Well, that's God. God cannot be wrong. I mean, I'm not going to get into criticizing God because something could happen. Ah! Okay.
Lightning,
I've done that
lightning, be
before.
careful.
Okay. So the Levites are now going to serve God in the Mishkan, in the shrine. But how do you relieve the firstborn of this privilege? Frankly, throughout the Torah, mostly the Torah, not the rest of the Bible, the firstborn really come off badly. They're supposed to be a big shot. Reuven, for example, sleeps with his father's concubine, which is not a good idea to sleep with your aunt. That is very bad politics. And he never got invited to another reunion. But, I mean, how do you deal with this with the firstborn? Because God loves it's not primogeniture, which is the firstborn, it's ultimogeniture, which is the lastborn. Okay? Because everybody's the lastborn. Moses, David, Solomon, a few others. Okay? But that's how they deal with that. That's probably the most dramatic part of the Torah portion. Otherwise, it's mostly stuff you can probably get at Home Depot because they're taking apart, with all due respect. Lowe's, I'm sorry, God for that, take it back, okay? You had to disassemble the sanctuary and you had to reassemble it elsewhere. It had a fence around it, it had a tent, and of course, as we know, the tent contained the skins of many animals, including the dugong.
What's a dugong?
It's a song.
I met her in the corner and I asked her to dance.
I told you I had to ask.
Dugong.
Oh,
A
okay.
dugong is like a manatee,
Okay.
okay?
In real
In the
life.
desert?
In real life.
No, in the Nile.
Okay.
Okay, they had a
They're in
dry eye.
denial.
Okay,
Denial.
so that's pretty much, and they've got numbers because when the Israelites settled, and they didn't wander all the time. There's several instances where they camp in the same place for 2-3 years, and they give the order that the tribes surrounded the sanctuary and so on. But my friend Paul mentioned Shavuot, and I think it does bear mentioning. Because it's definitely the poor cousin of the big three. The big three, okay, I'm shaking a lulav, not on Pesach. If you're shaking a lulav on Pesach, then you...
Oh, Sukkot.
Sukkot, yes, all right. What about a flat cracker and some horseradish?
Passover.
Passover. What about Shavuot? What you got for Shavuot?
I have no idea.
Blintzes. That's it. It's crazy.
Actually, that's the best one.
Okay, well, each to his own. But the point is, in biblical times, it was the Chag HaBikurim. It was the festival of the first fruit. You would have to take the first fruit, the select fruit. God doesn't like Macintoshes with bumps. Okay, God likes perfect fruit. Okay, and you bring the perfect fruit to the sanctuary, and the Levites get 10%. And I honestly don't know what they do with the rest. I mean, you can't burn it unless you're my nana making baked apples. And you can't really do very much with it. I don't know if they're growing oranges in Israel at this point. I don't think so. Well, they do. No, now they are, but back then, okay? All right. Well, the temple is destroyed and there's no place to bring the first fruits. And we're kind of out of the farming business anyway, so we have to find a meaning for this holiday. And that's when it gets identified with the giving of the Torah. You'll notice it's the giving of the Torah. It's not the receiving of the Torah. What's the difference? Give, receive. See, God's hand is always out. He's always offering you the Torah. It's your choice. It's your free will as to whether you wish to study and obey the Torah or not. I mean, let's face it, everybody does a selective move on the Torah anyway. Even the folks who claim to observe all of the 613 mitzvot can't possibly do it because the majority of them relate to temple worship. So we'll leave that alone. But the sterling example of Shavuot is the book of Ruth. Who's read the book of Ruth? It's only 4 chapters. Okay, that's what I like. The book of Ruth. The book of Ruth is a listing of the very first official conversion to Judaism. Now, prior to that, how you converted to Judaism was mostly by your father's tribe. So it was definitely patrilineal. But then later on, it became matrilineal. Why did it become matrilineal? Because if the Cossacks happened to be in town and they committed rape and slaughter, and a Jewish girl got pregnant because of rape, they would not throw her out of the community, but if she did give birth, they would accept the child as their own. That's how, for example, you got these blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jews. They used to say the Cossack was in the woodpile. But meantime, Ruth comes along, and this is going back to about, well, the book was written around the 5th century BCE. We don't know when the story took place. We don't know if the story took place. I think something like it must have taken place. There was a famine. How unusual. And when there's a famine, what do?
You go where there's food.
Right, or you go to Publix. You go where there's food. In this case, they go to the land of Moab. Now, this is a very chancy, brave, courageous move, because the Moabites were historically the enemy of the Jews. I could go back to where it originated, but it's not necessary. And there are 2 boys, I love this, get these names. Machlon and Chilion are the names. The woman, their mother is Naomi. She has a husband, but he dies early in the book. I don't remember his name. But the boys, I remember their names, because Machlon and Chilion mean disease and sickly. You gonna marry these guys? Well, sure, truly enough, they go to a singles dance whilst in Moab. They meet 2 lovely girls, Ruth and Orpah, and they marry them. And now it's time for them to go home. They're going to go back to Israel because Naomi is missing her family. And apparently the famine ended. How do you end a famine? Is it like,
It's an airdrop of food.
That's right.
Like crazy, like it does here.
I'm sorry, what?
It rains like crazy and everything starts growing.
There you go. It rains. Okay, it rains. All right. So they're on their way back, and what you're talking about here is a widow with 2 other widows. It's very sad. And the 2 other widows, Ruth and Orpah, are fairly young, because girls got married. You could marry a girl 12 years old. It's in the Talmud. Okay? I'm not saying you should, but I'm just telling you the kind of thing that they permitted in those days. Because frankly, if you lived to be 40 years old and had a tooth left in your head, I know all those remarkably long spans of life that they talk about early in Genesis. But that stuff is all exaggerated or has symbolic value and so on and so forth. Okay. Naomi turns and she says to Ruth and Orpah, "Return, my daughters, go back to your own country. There's no future for you in Israel. You're Moabites and you're widows. Nobody's going to touch you." Anyway, so they keep going, and Naomi tries one more time, and she says to Ruth and Orpah, incidentally, Orpah, a nurse, Oprah Winfrey's mother wanted to name her Orpah, but for some reason a nurse misspelled the name and she became Oprah. So that's just a little bit of trivia for you. Naomi turns and says to her daughters-in-law, "Return, my daughters, even if I got pregnant tonight," which is very difficult to pull off on account of I'm a widow. "Would you stick around until these boys grew up and you could marry them?" So they all weep bitterly, and Orpah leaves. Orpah goes back to Moab.
I was another father.
Right. Okay. But Ruth says famous words, "Whither thou goest, I will go, and where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God." And Naomi says, "Oh, okay." Because do they have Social Security?
No.
Food stamps? Politicians threatening to take these things away?
Yes.
No, well, yes, possibly.
You're both right.
Okay. So they go home, and Naomi says to Ruth, "Listen, honey, sweetie baby, the only way we're going to get any fodder here is for you to go gleaning." Now, you remember the painting The Gleaners by Millet, Frenchman? Okay? It's exactly the same way. What happens is that you don't, when you're harvesting, and we're not talking about a John Deere tractor here. We're talking about several people with the sickle, the scythe, as I am very skilled in this department. You see how I move my arms. Okay? It's a good thing I don't cut my leg off. Anyway, I think we're in the Bronze Age too, so you can't cut a heck of a lot. So all of the harvesters are harvesting, and they're supposed to leave the corners of the field unharvested. Who gets the corners of the field?
Poor and
The
hungry.
poor people. Yes. And what if, again, not a John Deere tractor, what if it's a wooden wagon moving along, and some of the grain falls off? Who gets that?
Poor people.
Again, the poor people. So this is really the closest thing they have to social welfare. Do you think it's a successful system?
Well, we're still here, so it must have been all right.
It must have worked
Yes.
better than
As they say, when you got nothing to lose. All right. Now, Naomi says, "Where did you glean today, my daughter?" And she says, "Oh, over in the field, this rich guy Boaz." And Naomi's eyes light up, and she says, "Okay, listen to me. You need a redeeming kinsman. You need somebody to remove any previous connections you have with either Machlon or Chilion, sickly or diseased." That was the name of the boys who died. You got to go through a ceremony. And so you stick with Boaz. Now, Boaz is no chicken. Boaz, he's old. He must easily be 38. You don't have to leave just because I'm insulting ages. Okay, anyway. So she goes. Now, the harvest was the time to party. And they all have, I'm assuming they're not chewing on the wheat. They bake something from the wheat, maybe a mandel bread, maybe a babka. And they are allowed to drink strong drink. What kind of strong drink are we talking about in those
Wine.
days?
wine.
Wine. Okay. How about cider? They didn't have cider?
They didn't have apples.
Didn't have apples.
They didn't have apples. They were very poor.
They only had grapes.
Okay. So Boaz drinks, shall we say, a little bit too much. And he goes to lie down in the barn, because that's the place to lie down, on a pile of hay. And Ruth, now this is where it gets a little
Touchy.
X-rated, okay? Because Ruth goes and she lies down and she uncovers his feet, okay? Now, uncovering his feet may be a euphemism for
Sex?
possibly.
Let's do it.
Possibly.
That's settled.
What's the
Okay.
rest?
What if
You
he
You
gets cold
uncovered the
feet?
rest.
In the middle of the night, he does get cold feet. Very good. No, Stuart, you're great. You're right on the money. He does indeed get cold feet. And you know, Stephen, you have cold feet?
If you start from the shoulders down, removing the blanket, eventually you won't uncover the feet.
I guess
That's
you,
about
and maybe
feet
some
up.
other things too. Don't forget, this is before BVDs are invented. Okay. So anyway, he wakes up at midnight, and behold, a strange woman is lying at his feet. And he says, "Who are you?" And she says, "I am Ruth, and I am distantly related to you. Spread your cloak over me, for you are a redeeming kinsman." And he says, "But my feet are cold." No. He does so, and the next day he says, "Listen, my daughter." Now, come on, if your husband-to-be is calling you my daughter, he must be considerably older than you. And she's a young Pachechi. So he says, "Do not glean in anyone else's field, whether poor or rich. You stay with me, and I'll make sure that you go home with a decent amount of wheat." Because not only does he let her glean, while the wagon is going, he's pulling out big handfuls of wheat and tossing them into her basket, or whatever it is you carry wheat in. Okay. And then Naomi says, this is great. We are riding high here. And Boaz says, "I have to organize a bet din." That is a group of 3 Jews who are not related to each other, or to him, or to Ruth, and so on, to Naomi, and so on. And he does so. And this takes place at the gates of the city, because the gates of the city is where anything worth watching is happening. And they say to him, do you want to redeem her? Do you want to, take her to your own? He says, yes, I do. So they are married. They are married. She gives birth, and she becomes the great-grandmother of none other than King David, who apparently was born on Shavuot and died on Shavuot. It's a midrash. It's a legend. Okay, now you please jump in anytime. Okay, and so it has a happy ending. Now, why do we read it on Shavuot? It deals with the harvest. It deals with the first official convert to Judaism, even though she doesn't meet with a rabbi for 10 months because there are no rabbis yet. And it has a happy ending, which is so unusual for Jews. Okay, but that's where she comes from. And David, so you could say David was the offspring of a Jew by choice. And so therefore we should be very welcoming to Jews by choice, which we strive to be. Okay, besides that, Shavuot has, God shouldn't punish me, not a heck of a lot. But you can have anything made out of cheese. Now, why anything made out of cheese, you ask? I will tell you. Excuse me, there are about 3 reasons. Okay, Cantor has a... What?
Milk.
Milk.
Yeah, you can have whatever is dairy.
But why? What's the connection between milchiks and Shavuot? I will tell you. You do a gematria on halal. Okay?
Okay, I will.
Okay. A gematria, that means you take the numerical value of the Hebrew letters. Okay? Halal. That's 8 plus 30 plus bet is 2. That's 40. Now, give me a 40 in Judaism.
40 days.
40 days where?
Moses was in.
Moses on Har Sinai for 40 days and nights.
40 years.
Right, 40 days and nights. Any others?
40 years crossing the desert.
40 years in the wilderness, yes. Flood, yes. The flood. Okay, even though Noah was not Jewish, we kind of take him in. And that's one important reason. Also because the Torah is compared to milk and honey. It says in the Song of Songs, honey and milk are under your tongue. That's number 1. Number two. Okay, this is a little strange. When Moses is up on Mount Sinai, God says, ooh, let me give you the kosher laws. And he says, okay, I'll write them down. And he goes down and he tells the Israelites, and they realize all of their meat is treif. So they take a day to slaughter more cows, and they eat dairy in the meantime. Okay? All right, what's the third reason? I had a third reason. It's always like that. You forget the third reason. But I looked for stories about Shavuot, and you really don't have anything besides a video. And it's from the Reform movement, yes.
I think I remember once you mentioned that in the olden days, the Torah scholars were very...
Oh, yes, very good. Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Do you want to continue?
No, because you say it better than I can.
Okay, well, nobody believed it when I said it, but Paul is right. In the olden days in Europe, meat was very expensive. One of the great things, when our ancestors came to this country, they couldn't believe, A, that meat was so cheap, and B, you could get the fatty cuts, because they loved fatty meat, because they thought if you're fat, you're healthy. But a Torah scholar could not afford meat, so they would eat dairy foods. So for the one day of the year on Shavuot, when you eat dairy foods, you get the same credit as if you were a knowledgeable Torah scholar. You like that? Trust the Jews to raise a food item to the level of intellect. You can't make this stuff up. I love this stuff. I really, truly do. Okay, that's it. That's Shavuot, which technically begins tomorrow night. There's one more thing. If you stay awake tomorrow night and you study any Jewish book, there is a special book you study for Shavuot. It's called the Tikkun Leil Shavuot, the special book that repairs the world, and it's designated for Shavuot. And you study all night. Then at midnight, the heavens open up and God appears and grants you 3 wishes. No, I made the last part up. But apparently the...
Now I'm not staying awake.
Okay, the thing about staying up all night, because I've seen that. I've seen these masmidim, that is perpetual scholars. They stay up all night, and you can tell because they're the ones falling asleep in shul the next morning. It's rough staying up all night. I pulled a couple of all-nighters when I was in college, in yeshiva, okay? Not necessarily to study Torah, but because I owed 2 papers the next day, okay? All right, that's it. Any questions? Otherwise, we can proceed to... But that's it. That's Shavuot. Thank you very much. Shabbat Shalom. Good Shabbos.
Shabbat Shalom.
Okay.
Shabbat Shalom.
All right, we're going to light the candles.
I guess we have to say that.
Okay, Doreen, do you want to do the honors?
Sure, hold me. Yeah, second. Hold this up. Hold this up and put one through that. Can't get good help around here, sorry.
The crew is laughing.
Just sitting here minding my own business. I just hold this up. She wants to be able to them
I had water, but I left it at John Brown's.
We can fill out here.
Yeah, but this is soda.
Oh, okay.
Shall
Then it's happening.
Okay. We wave our hands over the candles, bring the Shabbat, cover our eyes, sing the blessing. Asher Kirishanu b'mitzvotav, V'tzivanu v'tzivanu lahadlik ner, V'tzivanu v'tzivanu lahadlik ner, V'tzivanu v'tzivanu lahadlik ner, Shel Shabbat. Amen. Shabbat Shalom, good Shalom. Thanks for the
Good job.
Okay, not 11 or 11.
Shabbos once again.
Good job, Paul.
Oh, is that it?
Shabbos there, my man.
Okay.
Good job. Howdy.
Come on, check it out. Look at the video. Good job.
Check it before I put it on.
Shabbos, my dear.
Good job. Good job.
Shalom, Malakei Shalom, Malakei Elyon. Imelech Malakei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Balchuni Shalom, Malakei Shalom, Malakei Elyon. Kadosh Baruch Hu. Malakei Shalom, Malakei Shalom, Malakei Elyon. Melech Malakei Amlachim, Kadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, Abu Chavez. So, page number 15, let's see if you remember last Friday night, Lechunera Lena, Lechunera Lena, Lechunera Lena, Lechunera Lena, Ladonai,
Lechuneranena, 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 Adonai. Nadia, Nadia, letzuri sheinu, nekadma fana betoda. Nadia, Nadia, letzuri sheinu, mizminot Nadia lo. Lechuneranena, 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 Adonai. Lechuneranena, 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 Adonai.
Reading silently.
Arba'im shana kehud vedor, va'omar al to'e levaveim, והם לא ידעו דרכי, אשר נשבעתי באבי, אם יבואו אל מנוחתי.
Page 21, the Lahadadi.
לך לך דודי, נגרד נגרד קלה, פני פני שבת נקבלה. לך לך דודי, נגרד נגרד קלה, פני פני שבת נקבלה. לני 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 לך דודי, נגרד נגרד קלה, פני פני שבת נקבלה. לך לך דודי, נגרד נגרד קלה, פני פני שבת נקבלה. שמור וסחור ודיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד. אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ולתפארת ולתהילה. לך דודי, נגרד נגרד קלה, פני פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי, נגרד נגרד קלה, פני פני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי בקורה ולהכה, וראש מקדם לסוכה. סוף במעשה מבקשת, כי לה 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 לה. לך דודי, נגרד נגרד קלה, פני פני שבת נקבלה. לך לך דודי, נגרד נגרד קלה, פני פני שבת נקבלה.
22, fourth stanza, please rise, face the door through which the Sabbath king will enter.
בואי בשלום מתנת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצורה, תוקמו לים סגולה. בואי חלה, לילה 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 לילה. לך דודי, נגרד נגרד קלה, פני פני שבת נקבלה. לך לך דודי, נגרד נגרד קלה, פני פני שבת נקבלה. לה 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 לה. לך דודי, נגרד נגרד קלה, פני פני שבת נקבלה. לך לך דודי, נגרד נגרד קלה, פני פני שבת נקבלה.
Please be seated. All right, page 23, we're doing this more shir.
מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולסמר לשמך עליון, ולסמר לשמך עליון. להגיד בבוקר חזקך, באמונתך בלילות, עלי עשור בלילה וללך, היגיון וכינור. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולסמר לשמך עליון,
ולסבר לשמך עליון, ולסבר לשמך עליון, ולסבר לשמך עליון. Ogienu obur beseriva deshenim varanim eyo leagin yashar Adonai tzuri tzuri velo
turn to the Baruch Hu on page 28, and we'll ask Al Reamer and Dr. Joel Lubar to honor us by opening the Ark. Please rise. There you go. Fold it over. This one. There you go.
Baruchu et Adonai Mevorach.
Baruch Adonai le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Mevorach. Le'olam va'ed.
Amen. Yeshua, thank you very much. Please be seated. Sir, Yeshua. No, we're going to leave it away. Please be seated.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בדברו מרי ורבים בחוכמה פותח שערים, ובתמונה משנה עיתים ומחלים את הזמנים ומסדר את הכוכבים במשמרותיהם, ברקיע כרצונו, בורא יום בלילה, כולל אור מפני חושך, בחושך מפני אור. ומעבין יום, ומבין לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה. אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי וקיים מדברים לא חלינו אלא ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, המריב הרבים.
All right, English reading on page 29. Since we are celebrating the giving of the Torah, we're on the right-hand side, just below the line, Torah is a closed book. We'll do this responsively. Torah is a closed book until it is read with an open heart. House of Israel, great and small, open your hearts to the words of Torah. Torah is demanding, it's sweeter than honey, more precious than gold. House of Israel, young and old, open yourselves, heart and soul to its treasures. Torah sanctifies life, it teaches us how to be human and holy. House of Israel, near and far, cherish the eternal sign of God's love. Torah is given each day we can choose to reject or accept it. House of Israel, now as in Sinai, choose to accept and be blessed by its teachings.
ועבד קל תסיר ממנו לאור עולמים, ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל.
Page 30, we cover the eyes on the top line. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Uncover the eyes. Baruch Shem Kivod, Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Reading the English. You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. And these words which I command you this day, you shall take to heart. Teach them diligently to your children. Recite them at home and away, night and day. Bind them as a sign upon your hand, and as a reminder above your eyes. Inscribe them upon the doorposts of your homes and upon your gates. Please continue silently to the end of the paragraph at the top of 31. Page 32, middle of the page.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורא תהילות, עושה פלא. מלכותך רבנך, אוקיי ים לבני משה, שני אנו ואמרו. וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל.
Page 33, we have the prayer for those who are not well. I did speak with Ruth Gale today, and just about an hour and a half ago, and she is in rehab at John Knox. She had a falling incident. I spoke with her son as well. I spoke to Roseanne Elachman, and we thank God. Howard is doing better. He's able to answer questions, and he sat in a regular chair for a period of time. And let's see, who else is there? Laura. Yeah, I spoke with Laura early in the week, and she's hopeful. It's a long, hard path, but we are certainly praying for her recovery. Yes. Okay, let's go around and yes, anyone?
Again, Laura again.
Okay, Refuah Shalema.
You out? No? Me?
You, yes.
Nancy Austin,
Refuah
Todd
Shalema.
Austin,
Refuah Shalema.
Lauren Mauer,
Refuah Shalema.
Lizzie Shapiro,
Refuah
and
Shalema.
Susan Hurley Afifi.
Refuah Shalema. Okay. Yes.
Joe and Judy Cousins.
Refuah Shalema.
Carl.
Refuah Shalema. Okay, Paul.
Give me a minute.
Okay, we'll get back to you.
It's like the Oscars.
Yes. Okay, yes. No? Yes. No? Good, thank God. Yes, oh, I'm sorry.
Lisa Grossman,
Refuah Shalema.
Pearl Katz,
Refuah Shalema.
Wayne and Harry Nicholson.
Refuah Shalema.
Serafina Klein.
Refuah Shalema.
James Basmagian.
Refuah Shalema. Yes.
Okay, Wayne Croy, Irv McCreary,
Refuah Shalema.
Stuart Epstein, Joel Shankman, Morty Fogel, Bart Dozer, Serafina Klein, Bart Reynolds, and Russell Schottger.
All right, let's read the top left-hand paragraph on page 33. Help us, Adonai, to lie down in peace, and awaken us again our sovereign to life. Spread over us your shelter of peace. Guide us with your good counsel.
Save
Save
us
us because of your mercy. Shield us from enemies and pestilence, from starvation, sword, and sorrow. Remove the evil forces that surround us.
Shelter us in the shadow of your wings, O God, who watches over us and delivers us. Our gracious and merciful ruler,
Guard our coming and our going. Grant us life and peace, now and always. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Praise be to Adonai, who spreads the shelter of peace over us, over all his people Israel, over Jerusalem and the entire world.
Amen.
Rosalenu sukat shlemecha, Baruch atah Adonai, Borei sukat shalom aleinu v'al kol amo Yisrael, v'al Yerushalayim, v'al kol ha'olam kulo. Amen. 34.
ושמרו עיני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לתורתם ולתורם. ושמרו עיני ישראל את לדורות ברית עולם. ואני אומר בני ישראל, עודי לעולם, עודי לעולם, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורות ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים את הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורות ברית עולם. הוא היום השביעי, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורות ברית עולם.
Please rise for the half Kaddish.
My wife.
Okay, now we're getting a little weird.
יתגבר ויתקדש שם רבה, ועל בדברה שלותה ויבריך מלכותך, וחיי כל יום יומי כל וחיי לכל בית ישראל. בגלה בגלה ובזמן קריב יאמרו אמן. יש ברכה מבורך לעולם לעולם היה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמלמוד השם ולאמין כל ברכתה ושירתה ושמחתה ונחמתה תאמין עליה
All right, the Amidah, the Standing Silent Prayer, 35b, and concluding on page 38, after which you may be seated.
Israel, Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ya'akol Yisrael, V'yivru.
All right, we'll continue with the, was that the full copy? Okay. All right, let's go on to the Kiddush, and the Kiddush is on page, okay, first we're gonna do the full Kaddish and then the Kiddush. The full Kaddish is on page 48, please rise.
יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר מדרום מדינת ויתעלה 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 על שומרי קודשה ואלה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה ושמחתה ולחימתה בינה ברמה ואמרה יתקבל אצל דורמותו דכל ישראל כדמות משמעיה ואמרה יגי שלמה רבה משמעיה וחיים עלינו על כל ישראל ואמרה עושה שלום ממרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל האמרה.
Right, we have the very lovely cups that were donated by our dear friend Solomon Bezdias
Wine,
in
juices
memory of his
following.
grandparents.
Wine,
And the Kiddush,
wine,
in the usual place, page 49.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם בורא פרי השפר ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר הגיע שלום מצוותו ורצה בנו ושבת קודשו ואהבה ברצון הנחילנו זיכרון למעשה בראשית גילויים תחילה למקראי קודש סגל יציאת מישראל קיבלנו בחרת ילדותנו קידשת מכל העמים ושמעת קודשך ועמהו רצון הנה קראתנו ברוך אתה אדוני מגרש חיים.
Oh, it's okay to drink that?
Yes.
Not to you. Everybody else.
Anyone wanting more,
we have plenty
Next
of wine and
Kiddush.
plenty of juice.
okay, please indulge.
You can check that. I could say, okay.
It's all of your fingers, Tony.
It's okay.
Seriously, that was nasty.
All right, we will bid goodbye to the Omer.
Bye,
We are able to count up to 29. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Let's do no more.
So I'll ask you to please rise and turn to page 55.
That's what I said.
At the bottom of 55, we'll do the Baruch. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kishat v'atav v'tzivahu al sfirat ha'omer. Hayom tisha v'arba'im yom, shehem sheva shavot la'omer. Amen. Today is the 49th day of the Omer, comprising 7 weeks of the Omer. Exactly! And God willing, next year we'll be here to celebrate it again. Okay. I think we can do the Aleinu on page 51. Oh, are we opening the Ark? Yes, we are opening. Ooh, Stephen, come open the Ark. Okay. I like to make, he makes the long walk. You should have some walking music.
No,
I just have to push in the
just
middle.
push
Now
it
we're
back.
just pull it apart. We change it every
Pull it
week,
apart.
just to
Aleinu לשמח הכל, יוצא ראשית, שלא עשנו כאויב הרצון, ולא שמנו במשמחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כמהם, ולא עלינו ככל עוונותיו. אנחנו גויים, משחרים ובונים, ולמלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא בשמיים ויוצר הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו, ושכינתו זו, וגובי מרומים. הוא אלוהינו, אבן מלכנו, אבן זולתו, קרקעתו בתורתו, וידעת היום השמות אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים, השמיים בלבד, והארץ והארץ יפתח עלינו המה. והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו
As the ark is closed, if you're not saying mourner's Kaddish, you may be seated. Otherwise, we're on page 52 with the mourner's Kaddish. Kedal v'id kadash shemei rabbah. Amen. Yalmad yivrach v'rutei v'yamliach malchutei. V'chayechon v'mechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael. V'agalo v'zman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevorach v'yolam u'mel ma'yor. Yitborach v'yishtabach v'yitpo'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. Yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudisha b'richu. The Elah min kol birachata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, ta'miran v'alma v'yimru. Amen. V'heish lamar rabba min shemaya, v'chaim alinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, uyaseh shalom, alinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol Yoshvei Tevel v'yimru.
Amen.
All right, before the cantor leads us in the closing song, the Adon Olam, a few words from our wonderful president.
Good Shabbos, everyone.
Shabbos.
And thank you so much for coming out on this drippy, miserable evening. And you took chances on the road, and you came anyway. And we so appreciate it.
God has blessed us with rain.
God has blessed us with rain. You're right, Al. He has blessed us with rain, and with so much else, because we're here together with our temple family. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for making that effort and being here with us. I want to say hello to Laura and to Howard Elikman and Roseanne
Solomon.
and to Solomon and to
Esther.
Ruth Gail and her sister Marilyn, and everybody get well. We're thinking about you and praying for you all of the time. I said Howard
I'm so
and
sorry.
Roseanne.
I apologize.
did. So no apology needed. Tomorrow, is our more traditional Saturday service.
Bless you.
God bless. After which Rabbi's class will be.
I've never done him before, and his name is Philo, Philo. He lived in Egypt, and truth to tell, his philosophy had a greater effect on Christianity than Judaism, but he is very Jewish. He never stopped being Jewish, so we're going to give him a shot.
One of us, we gotta give him a shot, you know, gotta give him a chance, right?
Doesn't get out.
We have our Shavuot service on Sunday morning at 9 o'clock. I have a pre-Shavuot cheesecake on the table tonight, just so we can start to celebrate a little early. And then
Sunday and Monday, the both
right,
days
and Monday,
are Shabbat.
right. I know, I didn't get to Monday yet. Monday is also Shavuot and our Yizkor service. Both services are at 9 in the morning. Please come and be with us. We expect to have more than a minyan to celebrate the giving of the Torah. So come and be with us. Also, we'll have Sunday morning. We'll have a blintzah breakfast to celebrate Shavuot.
Temple.
I'm sorry.
We're having it here, Temple, Sunday morning.
Sunday morning
In the
in
chapel.
the big chapel.
Oh, the big one.
I think so. Yeah. It depends on how the day looks. If we have a big crowd, we're definitely going to be in the big sanctuary, and if it's a smaller group, we'll be in this cozy, wonderful Beit Midrash. Our regular minyans are, are Monday and Thursday, 8:45. Please come. Cantor gives a lesson at each of the minyans that is just remarkable. I can't say enough about that, and you'll be missing something, and it's a great way to start the day. July 11th, 18th, and 25th, Thursday evening, 7 o'clock, a 3-part series by Dr. Murray Lichtenstein on the Dead Sea Scrolls. And in August, date to be determined, but the events will happen, we're going to have a challah baking afternoon.
Oh, fun.
And that's going to be on a Thursday, followed by a Shabbaton on Friday. So I'll have all the specifics for you next week, but that's a lovely way to start the holidays. And before you know it, they'll be here. So let's start celebrating together. A very good Shabbos to all of you.
Good job.
Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos. No, it's a cheesecake. It's not a ricotta cheesecake.
It's a Jewish cheesecake.
Good.
It should be a New
But
York
it-
cheesecake,
you'll have
It's not
right,
the same
Peter?
if it is from New York
Well,
or from other places, because
Yeah,
the real
just said New York.
cheesecake is one and
Yes.
So you've already cut it.
But I want you to ask it some questions
it's
so we'll
in
know it's
4
Jewish.
sections, different flavored cheesecake.
Oh, that is good.
So come for
And
coffee.
and it's good for you because it's cheese.
It's, yeah,
No
It's
cholesterol.
vitamin
the bill.
vitamin D.
Okay, so because it's Shavuos coming, Shavuot in Hebrew, Shavuos in the
Go in
Shavuos.
Espanol.
So, it's about the Torah. Torah, 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 Torah. Adon olam asher malach b'terem kol yatzir nivra. Hey! Re'ez asa v'chetzo kol hazayim melech shemo nikra. Hey! V'yakarem kiklot hakol levado yimlok nora. V'hu hayam v'hu oved v'hu yeh v'tifara. V'hu echad v'sheni yamshil lo le'achbira. V'yishit v'litzachrit v'lo ha'oz v'ha'misra. V'hu eli v'chai wadi v'tzochem li v'tzara. והוא ניסי ובנוסי ולעשוסי ביום ויום אקרא בידו אפקיר רוחי תשען ואהירה ועם רוחי גביעתי אדוני לי ולא ירא
because he always throws in like 4 more lines. Okay, please rise. Are we okay? You sure?
יברכך אדוני וישמרך,
And Lord bless you and keep you.
יאיר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונך,
And Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you.
יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך שלום.
May the Lord turn his face into you and grant you peace. We'll say amen.
אמן.
Shabbat shalom. Shabbat sameach.
חג שמח, שבת שלום.
Shabbat shalom. Very good.
So,